What I'd like to do now is we'd like to move on to part 3 of the 4 segments, and we're going to look at Fibonacci and the golden mean spiral. There are many names for this divine proportion used by many cultures and used over many eras. The most common name is obviously the divine section. It's also known as the divine proportion, the sacred cut, the perfect division, the extreme balance, the golden mean, the golden section, the golden ratio, the golden measure, the phi ratio, and many other titles as well. What's important now is that we understand that there's an intelligent and sophisticated series of numbers called the Fibonacci sequence. But what we want to do is look at the ratios between the successive Fibonacci numbers as they appear in order. What that means that we're going to divide each Fibonacci number into the next Fibonacci number. What we're really interested in is looking at this imaginary line here that's never really reached. This line here, it's actually 1.618. So as we keep dividing the Fibonacci numbers, like when we divide 3 by the previous Fibonacci number, the answer is 2 into 3 is 1.5. So we look for 1.5 on the y-axis. So we go, here's 1.5. So we go along here and we put a dot on this number 3 here. Now for the number 5 here, 5 divided by 3 is about 1 2/3, which is 1.66 repeater. Here's 1.66. We travel across and we plot that number on this axis here, which represents 5. And then we go to the next one here. We say 8 divided by 5 is 1 3/5. So that's about 1.6. So we find this number here, 1.6, and we plot it there. When we divide 89 into 144, we get closer and closer to this mystical number called 1.618033988. So it's not a number that we actually reach. The golden mean ratio is actually it's a function, it's a principle of nature. When we say that the divine proportion is 1.618, we're just approximating it and we kind of referencing it to a number, but really it is its own consciousness. It is a frequency that approaches an aesthetic proportion. What you can see is an interesting phenomenon. We start off with a long wave, and as we progress with the Fibonacci numbers, we go right down into a short wave. It's a long frequency going to a finer frequency. So this thing of the golden mean ratio has an ability to capture the long wave to the short wave, which is about the galactic memory and the atomic memory, bringing the two dualities back into a oneness. And I suspect the reason why we've been told that it's a nonsense number is that it actually holds grand secrets. And I'm convinced now, after all my research with Vedic mathematics, that the divine proportion, the Fibonacci sequence, is actually got a lot of recursion within itself. So to find meaning and harmony within the golden mean, we need to digitally add up all the double digits. So you keep plotting those numbers on this information here. This is another worksheet. I want children to discover that they find that after 24 Fibonacci numbers, the same sequence of single digits keeps repeating forever. 24 recurring digits of the Fibonacci numbers is a grand secret, because those 24 numbers have the ability to compact themselves or compress themselves into a 3-dimensional shape. The only 3-dimensional shape that I know that has 24 faces and 24 edges is the star tetrahedron. So the ultimate feminine symbol of the golden mean is actually the spiral. We're just about at that point now where I'm going to show you how we can transform the Fibonacci numbers into a spiral. But before I show you that, I want to show you the masculine symbol of the golden mean. Anything straight lined in geometry is considered masculine, anything curved is feminine. So here's the ultimate symbol of the golden mean, and it's known as the pentacle. Wherever we look at the pentacle, this is actually the pentagram. When we draw that 5-pointed star, that's the pentagram. The polygon that fits in the circle is called a pentagon, but we're interested in where these diagonals cross, right? So where this distance intersects with that distance, this critical point here, this intersection point, has the relationship of the golden mean. So if this distance was 1 unit, then this distance here is 1.618. There's also a second occurrence of the golden mean. When we draw the star within the star, if I'm going to draw another pentagram within the larger pentagram, this distance here is 1.618 distance of that. So the star within the star within the star keeps reducing at the rate of the golden mean factor 1.618. So what that means is that we've suddenly found a wavelength that nature uses quite efficiently to go down into the small picture, into the short wave, but also we can keep increasing that star by the same factor of 1.618 and expand out into the galaxy. We suspect we found a ratio or wavelength that knows how to travel through the dimensions without self-destructing. And the only way something can do that is that it must be recursive. It must be self-similar. It's the same shape, same ratio that doesn't get destroyed. In a sense, when you have a child, that child is a self-similar reproduction of who you are, and it's taking your DNA into the future so that you can survive. We're talking about survival and indestructibility. So through love, your essence is expanded through your children and grandchildren and so on to infinity. But mathematically, that's expressed biologically by this critical wavelength point called 0.618 ratio. So the ultimate symbol of the divine proportion is the pentacle, and you can see why it's been kind of not demonized, but it's been given bad press by being associated to the witch hunt and to the witches, because really what they've done over the centuries is to put you in fear to the shape of the symbol, because the pentagram holds the memory of your DNA ratio, which is 0.618 ratio, which I'm going to show you some more slides of. So by putting fear into sacred symbol, what happens is that you can't access the memory of who you are. So the pentacle, the swastika, the Star of David, and many, many symbols have been tarnished. And what we're leading up to basically is that even the golden mean spiral has been tarnished, because when you understand what the three-dimensional view is of the two-dimensional Nautilus shell, it's literally a ram's horn, which is what was put on the devil card. So what I'm leading up to is I'm just giving you the information about the shapes and the numbers, and then we'll realize how deep this subject really is. What's interesting too is that not just on planet Earth, but when we look beyond the Earth into the solar system, we would like to know also that the Fibonacci sequence is found in the distances of the planets from the Sun. If you were to divide the orbit of the Earth, 365, by the orbit of Venus, which is 225 days, you would end up with a ratio called 1.618 exactly. So even the planets are mimicking this essential ratio. There is a series of about 5 books on sacred geometry, and taken from another book relating to a little book of coincidences is just a book called Sacred Geometry, and there's some exquisite pictures of what sound looks like. Imagine if we could see what sound actually looks like, the form or the shape of sound. So apparently the sound of what we call the perfect fifth, the musical fifth ratio, shows this beautiful shape in three-dimensional view. So So this is the sound of the fifth in music, which is very much related to the phi ratio because of its fiveness. There's another branch of science coming fresh into schools now. It's called cymatics, which is the ability to see sounds. The future in sound and geometry is to be able to see the shapes of sound. We've done a lot of work with chanting the sounds of the chakras. Like when we chant the sound of the heart chakra, it has a specific frequency and it's an ah. When you feel love, you feel that sound of ah. But if you were to measure that sound as a frequency and to see how that sound vibrates on a plate of glass with lots of fine sand particles, the sand particles magically in front of your eyes would form the shape of the Star of David. So the six-pointed Star of David is actually the sound of one of the chakras, which is the heart chakra, which is the ah sound. So shape and sound relate to frequency, vibration. We're going to look at each number of the Fibonacci sequence as actual a square shape. We're going to look at the Fibonacci in a two-dimensional shape, which is obviously the spiral, but we need to understand how we can use these numbers as square shapes to compact and compress all the shapes together. So I'll do this on the whiteboard. We are here to transform the numbers of the Fibonacci sequence 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, but to view them now as squares, because later on we're going to view them as cubes. But right now, let's just see what pattern we get when we compress, compact efficiently all these squares so they form one matrix. So I'm going to start off with a 13 by 13 square. So let's say this is 13 by 13. I'm going to descend down with the next Fibonacci number 8, 5, 3, 2, 1. Then I say, what's the next size, which is 8 by 8. I'm going to draw an 8 by 8 square. These are two-dimensional squares. So we could call it that's 8 by 8. Then I'm going to find the next square, which is a 5 by 5. So this is 5 by 5. And then I keep finding the next smaller square. Subdivision of the squares are just getting smaller and smaller. So this is 3 by 3. Then I do another square. So that's 2 by 2. And then we can just keep on going and going. But we find that we can keep going down, down, down into the small wave, right down into the atom. But we're not actually sure where they're all going around to. We're not actually sure. So let us get another map. I'm going to get another colour, say red, and I'm going to put my compass here. I'm going to put my compass here and open up the compass to this 13 units. So I'm going to draw an arc that goes from this point to that point. And then we're going to put our compass point here, and I'm going to draw a smaller arc. So each arc is reducing at the rate of 0.618, as you realise, as we're going from a 13 arc, an 8 arc. And now I'm going to put my compass here, and I'm going to draw another arc on the 5 by 5. And I'm going to put my compass here, and I'm going to draw another arc. And I'm going to keep getting smaller and smaller right down into the world of the atom. We could literally go forever. This is the mathematics of infinity. But we want to be very precise now. So the ancients worked out that there was a very critical 32-degree tilt that allowed us to go into this mathematics, vortex mathematics of infinity. So I'm going to draw in another colour the guidelines that I need, like snap lines, to show where's the center of this vortex that I'm whirling around. So what they did was they drew the two main axes from this point here. They went right through to that point. And then notice that that's a golden rectangle. And when I've drawn the big square here, notice also that this shape is a golden rectangle. every time I draw a square, like when I draw a square here, this shape becomes a golden rectangle. So now I'm going to draw the main axis of this golden rectangle, which is from this corner here to the other corner. So straight away I found my center point here, and this, I believe, is the 32-degree tilt angle that is the same as the chin angle of the Sphinx. It's tilted at a 32-degree tilt angle, which is similar in the next project that I show you with sacred geometry. We're going to look at when we take a cube and tilt it at 32 degrees 5 times, we go into the 4th dimension. We go from cube into dodecahedron, which is what Pythagoras was excited about. So just to let you know that these axes are at a very important tilt angle. Okay, so we get the red pen again. Now that I know where my center point is, I understand that as I travel around from square to square, as the squares get smaller, I'm literally forever always going around this mystical point. I don't know where I go. We suspect that we go into some kind of wormhole, and we can travel interdimensionally through that point into the small world or to the large world. It's the key to time travel. It's probably one reason why we don't know about golden mean, magic squares, Vedic mathematics, because this is part of your ascension process. It was hidden, it has been hidden from us, but it's there in nature all the time. And that's the beauty of this mathematics, that if we can't find this in nature, then it has no reality. And because this is the mathematics of the bones in your ear, the cochlea is also this spiral. This is like an antenna that picks up the waves so that it can focus vibration into the center. You see it in snail shells, you see it everywhere. This is also the shape of the galaxies as they're being born. And the reason why I'm showing you these two diagrams side by side is that this represents the feminine form of 1.618. This pentacle here, the star within the star within the star, is the masculine. But they're basically saying the same thing. Feminine, masculine. What I would like to lead on to now is to take this one golden mean spiral, and we're going to start rotating that spiral in space. So we're wanting now to have a look at the 3-dimensional view of many, many spirals as it's moving through space. Here's a diagram taken from Dan Winter's book on the golden mean spiral, where as we spiral around continuously, it seems to suggest a cup within a cup within a cup. So this is the 3-dimensional view, which has a kind of an affinity with what DNA is about. Here's another view of the same spiral done many, many times. The one shape viewed 3-dimensionally. Looks like cups within cups within cups. We're looking at the same pattern again, but this time we're looking at this 3-dimensional spiral from a top-down view. We're looking at the top of it, and it's quite interesting that we have the effect of it looking like some kind of cobra, that serpentine view of when a snake's just about to bite, it raises its head back and it's just about to send this vast force of energy out. So there's a critical energy when it's poised, and that's quite a good definition of the golden mean, this sort of like snake-like shape at the center here. It's where all the energy is concentrated, right here in the center. So here we have the golden mean spiral. Like there's the golden mean spiral, but as we turn it around from this point, it looks like this. Can you see the snake-like shape there? So, and this shape is wrapped around many, many times. So this center point here is actually right there. So what I would like to do now is take you back to the whiteboard and show you a bit more clearly what I'm trying to get at, is that we want to see the 3-dimensional view of this spiral. So rather than seeing this 13 by 13 square, what I would like you to visualize now is to look at this as a 13 by 13 by 13 three-dimensional spiral. What we're leading up to is trying to look at the compression of the spiral in 3D, all the cubes nesting in one coherent shape. So I want you to have a look at this shape here. Here's the logarithmic spiral that we drew in 2 dimensions down the bottom here. And I want you to now to visualize each square is a cube. So you can see a cube here, then there's a cube, a cube, a cube, and it's all in perfect alignment coming down to the original spiral. And then we're going to draw arcs, 3-dimensional arcs through each cube. So let's go back to the whiteboard. And basically what we're doing is that each square that you see here can now be visualized as a 3-dimensional cube. So this is 13 by 13 by 13 cube, cube, smaller cube, 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 and they keep getting smaller and smaller. And we're going to draw 3-dimensional arcs going through. So I'd like you to visualize now what would that shape be to you? What would it look like? Is there anything in nature that would show you the solution to nature's dilemma here? How to perfectly compress energy so that it's always forever in a movement, so it's always flowing. It doesn't self-destruct, it's self-similar. So there appears to be really one solution to the ability to contain space proportionately, and it seems to be found obviously in nature again. It's in the seashell. So if you look at this beautiful diagram here, we see the long wave as it's twisting around right down into a focal point here in the center. This to me is perhaps one of the best symbols of the 3-dimensional golden mean spiral. And it also suggests other shapes in nature as well. Are you familiar with the shape of the ram's horn, for example? It's very closely similar to the seashell shape here. So what you're looking at here is actually a fresh live ram's horn, and it's showing you this beautiful relationship of the long wave going right down into the short wave, which is at the tip of the horn there. This is nature's perfect expression of solving compression. So here I have 2 ram's horns, and you can see now why the sacred symbol of the ram's horn over the centuries has become demonized. It's quite beautiful to know that when we take 2 golden mean spirals, what would happen if you were to place them in a very particular and articulate way. So this diagram here, thanks to the courtesy of Heart Math Institute and Dan Winter, they did some amazing work, and they showed us that when the spiral keeps spiraling around and around and around, but 2 of them, when they're phase locked, what we get is the symbol of the heart, and we keep getting the heart within the heart within the heart. The big heart to the small heart, infinitely recursive, fractally embedded. The nest is infinite fractal. This is called the language of love. The same people, Dan Winter and Heart Math Institute, were collaborating in California, and what they wanted to do was they started asking some important questions like, can love be measured? Can we literally measure emotions? Like, does emotion have a sacred geometry? Is there a form to love, anger, hate, jealousy, bliss? And they found that when many people were meditating and they could measure their heart waves and brain waves, they found that they were resonating at this 1.618 hertz or frequency. So when we felt bliss or love, we resonate at 1.618 frequency. So this is the doorway. But when we feel hate, anger, we're out of sync with that frequency. So I believe that this is one of the keys to ancient knowledge, is an understanding of this love wave that can be shared. because it is a true doorway to infinity. So as you can see from this lecture, there's been quite a fascination for this vortex point known as the center or the eye of this golden mean spiral. So here you see the two-dimensional version of the spiral, but perhaps the best example of the three-dimensional version of the spiral is this shape here. If you can see that there's a golden line that goes around and around, that's actually the golden mean spiral. And it's the only known shape that can turn itself inside out. It creates a suction to the center. Another way of saying it is about getting sucked in. It's literally a point of creation and birth. It's literally the place of wormholes where we can travel interdimensional. And what I'm going to show you in the next lecture is that we were the tube torus donut. We actually were this shape in the first hour of our life. So a lot of scientists at the moment all around the world are totally excited about this tube torus donut because it has the ability to explain many, many things like transpiration of the roots into the leaves, magnetic fields. And a scientist in Japan actually was inspired by this, and he designed a toy that was able to implode. Here's a sphere that when it implodes, which is suction to the center, it could explode, implode. It's a bit like breathing. And he used this technology to solve a problem based on if there is a heavy weight at this point, how can we move this heavy weight? So they devised this structure so that when it expanded, it moved something from here to there. So sacred geometry helps solve practical and technological problems. So this is basically the principle of implosion, explosion, involution, evolution. In breath to the heart, out breath. It's as a breathing. And that's why scientists now are playing with these toys. In fact, scientists are even calling the universe, they're actually calling it as an imploded universe called impliverse. So there's a lot of new words being coined at the moment to satisfy the ability to explain the level of consciousness that's risen at the moment. Our concepts of the world are changing at the moment, and we need to embrace this principle, which we never really thought about before. It's learning how to breathe again, in, out, center, out, and always being interconnected with everything. Let us now focus our attention back to another important part of our biometrics, is the mathematics of the DNA molecule. So if we were to take a slice of the DNA helix, if you imagine a vertical helix, and we were to slice through that molecule, the cross-section of DNA molecule is apparently composed of 10 golden mean spirals. From each of these nodes on the outside, we're drawing in a golden mean spiral into the center. So this is the accepted and traditional view now of what DNA looks like as a cross-section. 10 golden mean spirals, perfectly nested and embedded. In our lecture after this on the three-dimensional geometry, when we look at all the male facets of straight lines and polygons like five-sided and six-sided shapes, we also realize that when we look at the DNA in another way, we actually see that the molecules on the rungs of this ladder, when we look at the helix, we can see that these genetic bases are connected in very particular arrangements. But when we look at one of these rungs, we can see that the molecules of DNA are arranged in a particular way where we have a pentacle, hexagon, and a golden rectangle. Hexagon, pentacle, golden rectangle. It's quite interesting that the symbolism of the pentacle again is found in our very DNA matrix. It's right inside of us. The memory of ancient geometry is right in our DNA. A lot of people have been asking for more information regarding how they can teach their children, or how teachers have been wanting some worksheets on how to